All right, looks like we have quorum. Good morning, everyone. My name is David Lucas with the City of Tempe, and I would like to welcome you to the March 3rd, 2021 MAG ITS Committee meeting. First order of business is to do a roll call. When I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Albert Garcia.
Here.
Ingyan Liu.
Here. Here.
Steve McKenzie.
Here.
Scott Notes.
Here.
Eduardo Raulilas.
Here.
Raquel Schatz.
Here.
Ward Stanford.
Here. Good morning, all.
Good morning. Mike Sutton.
Here.
Nicholas Swart.
I'm here.
Tessa Wessel.
Here.
And let's see. Looks like we have Hugh Bigoc.
Here.
And let's see. Marty, and I apologize if I'm mispronouncing the last name, Zeik.
Marty Zeke, and I am here. Nice to meet with you all.
Thank you. Thank you, and welcome. This is your first meeting as a member of the MAG ITS committee, and we would like to welcome you. Thank you. Let's see. Is there anybody else? Let's see. It looks like we have Shrini Gunla.
Good morning.
Good morning. Is there anybody else who I have not called your name?
Marshall.
Good morning, Marshall. And looks like we have Tony Whitfield as well. Anyone else? All right, with that, we have quorum, so I'd like to call today's meeting of the MAG ITS Committee to order. Please, just as a reminder, mute your microphone to eliminate any feedback. You will have an opportunity to raise your hand in the chat to be recognized, at which time you can unmute your microphone to speak. You can also use the chat to type in a question or comment at any time. And when you begin speaking, please state your name and your organization. With that, the next item on the agenda is call to the audience. Members of the public are asked to submit written comments related to this meeting through the MAG website. Comments may be sent at any time leading up to the meeting, but must be received at least 1 hour prior to the posted start time. This is an opportunity for members of the public to comment on items that fall under MAG jurisdiction, but are not on the agenda or are on the agenda for discussion and not for action. MAG staff, do we have any public comments?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the ITS committee. We received no comments for this item or any other item on the agenda.
All right, thank you very much. Item 3 on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from the February 3rd, 2021 meeting. Please take a few moments to review the minutes. And if you have any comments, please use the chat window to indicate those or raise your hand at this time. Looks like Scott Nodes has his hand up. Scott?
Yes, for the year, for last month's meeting, it was February 3rd, 2021, not 2020. And also number 3 for the approval of minutes for the ITS committee held on January 6th should be 2021 instead of 2020.
Thank you. Those will be corrected. It's always difficult with the transition to a new year till we get partway through. So thank you for catching those.
You're welcome.
Right. Seeing no other comments, I'll ask for a motion, please, to recommend approval of the meeting minutes from February 3rd.
David, this is Bruce Littleton. Move to approve minutes.
All right, thank you. And it looks like Scott has his hand up, so we'll put Scott down as a second. I will now poll everyone for your vote. Please vote yay or nay as I call on you. Hugh?
Aye.
Thank you. Susan?
Yes, approve.
Thank you. Albert?
Yay.
Srini?
Yeah.
Bruce?
Yay.
Yingyan?
Yay.
Steve?
Yay.
Scott?
Yay.
Eduardo?
Yay.
Marshall?
Yes.
Raquel?
Yay.
Ward?
Yay.
Mike?
Yay.
Nicholas?
Yay.
Tessa?
Yay.
Marty?
Yay.
All right, and with that, the minutes from the motion passes and the minutes from the February 3rd meeting are approved. Thank you, everyone. Before we go on to the next item on the agenda, I would like to take a moment to acknowledge Nicholas Swart with Maricopa County DOT. He recently announced his retirement, and on behalf of the MAG ITS committee, I would like to thank him for his past service as chair, as well as a longtime representative for McDOT on this committee. And I believe Jeff has some additional information to present.
Yes, I do. Next slide, please. Nicholas, congratulations on completing the tour of duty. As if it was just yesterday, 1998, the year you joined McDOT. Also the year the Aztec ITS Metropolitan Model Deployment Initiative, MMDI, I hate that acronym still, began. You know, Phoenix, along with Seattle, San Antonio, New York, New Jersey, were the envy of the nation. We are the 4 US DOT MMDI cities when ITS was in its infancy. And you were there. Next slide, please. As Aztec transitioned from a federal project to a sustainable regional initiative, during the change of leadership, you stepped up to the plate and carried Aztec program on your shoulder. Look what you have achieved. An ever stronger McDOT ITS team, and the legend of Aztec was reborn. Thank you for your determination, and thank you for your gentle spirit and your smile. And thank you for your contribution to the MAG ITS committee and what you have done for the region. Next slide, please. It was April 2012. You spoke at the debut of Anthem Connected Vehicle Testbed in front of hundreds of local and national visitors, press, political leaders, including the US DOT Deputy Secretary Greg Winfrey. It was you and your team that put Phoenix at the forefront of the national connected vehicle research and development. Next slide, please. We're so happy for you, Nicholas. We all look at you with an eyes of envy. It's the beginning of a new journey. Indulge yourself with your favorite yard work, take a car trip to a random destination, embrace nature, or go wherever your heart desires. Best wishes, Nicholas. Like they said, the best is yet to come. With that, I would like to invite Nicholas. Wait. Okay. I saw a hand raised. I think someone has requested to speak. Let me see. Want to make sure that I pronounce the name right. Miss Jennifer Toth. Welcome, Jennifer.
Thank you, Jeff, and thank you, David, for this opportunity for me to recognize Nicholas at the ITS committee at MAG. As Jeff quite eloquently said, the gentle spirit really encompasses Nicholas. Nicholas has served McDOT and the region for 23 years. Although we are very sad to see him go, he has left quite a legacy for the region and McDOT in particular. As you mentioned, he was there at the start of Aztec and has provided guidance for ITS deployment throughout the years. He's never been a go big or go home kind of guy, which has really served us well. He has carefully selected and positioned us for smaller deployments, which lead to much larger successes. He was instrumental in bringing the TISMO philosophy to Arizona and has moved the region and McDOT into the national forefront, serving on the National Operations Center of Excellence Technical Advisory Committee. His thoughtfulness and steady pace will be greatly missed. I'll end with a quote that I think surmises his legacy. There are always people who are into the old way of doing things. I don't think it's a bad thing necessarily, but things change. Nothing stays the same. If you can stay true to yourself, you're always going to be legendary. Nicholas, thank you for staying true and leading the way to a bright future for this region. Thank you for the opportunity, Jeff. I really appreciate it, and David.
Thank you, Jennifer. Nicholas, now it's your turn. Please limit your speech to 15 minutes, okay?
Don't worry about that. I'll give you some time back. Well, I thank you. I'm speechless. Thank you so much for David, Jeff, Jennifer, for these wonderful, kind words. I have a question, Jennifer. How did you get into this meeting?
A secret invitation.
But again, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. It's been a long time, as Jeff indicated. It started in '98, and but it has been a good time, an enjoyable time, and it was good to work with everybody, to work with the ITS committee. It has been a privilege to be part of that committee and the activities, and also the activities that not only of the committee, but all the other activities that took place around the activities of ITS. So I just wanted to say thank you to everybody, and it was good to get to know each of you much better and work with you over these years. One thing that's always stood out to me, I've been I had the opportunity to attend many conferences and conventions outside of the state. So, and one thing that many times came up was the collaboration that we have in this region, and which forms that very strong base to achieve and move forward on the ITS initiatives, and working together to achieve those. And many times other regions who indicated that we wish we had that, and that is something that we as a region can be very, very proud of. So moving forward, in preparation for my retirement, I've been thinking of this more than yesterday. Was to prepare those who would come after me. And as you've noticed over the past year, it has been mainly April and Faisal who took the lead on the ITS committee. And moving forward, it will be mainly April, obviously supported by Faisal. So again, I just want to say thank you for all these kind words. It did bring back some memories, which I've forgotten over time, but good to be reminded of that. And thank you, everybody. And I just want to wish everybody and ITS committee the best with the ITS and endeavors in the future, and the enhancements that continuously improve ITS in this region. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Nicholas. Thank you, Jennifer. How did you get into this meeting? I'm just kidding. I'm giving it back to David.
Thank you. Thank you, Jennifer, for making the time, and Nicholas for attending. You definitely will be missed. And thank you again for all of your contributions to the committee and to the region. We definitely appreciate everything that you've done for us.
Thank you, David.
With that, thank you. With that, we will resume our regularly scheduled programming and get back to item 4 on the agenda, which is the Program Manager's Report. MAG TSMO Program Manager Jeff Jenk will now provide us some updates and a report to the committee. Jeff?
Well, good morning, Mr. Chair again, ITS committee members. To start my Program Manager's Report, the first item is the FHWA update. I would like to invite Ms. Toni Whitfield of the Arizona Division of FHWA to provide that update. Toni?
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Thank you, Jeff. I do have a couple items on this slide here, but I will have some additional items to include in my update as well. So we'll start, as everyone knows, Federal Highway has the notice of proposed amendment on the MUTCD out, and that comment period has been extended through May 14th. Some great news just came out, and you can see it on the MUTCD website as well. Federal Highway has announced that there will be informational webinars coming in March. We do not have those dates yet, but you are able to subscribe to updates on that website. And if you do subscribe to those updates, you'll be the first to get that information on when those webinars come out. But I'll also be sure to update this committee on those dates as they become available. I have had some questions on the time frame of the MPA process, and this question should be answered during those March webinars. However, there is a flowchart online. It's on the MUTCD website as well that shows a general time frame of that process. So that first link, MUTCD amendment process, will take you to that time frame. So I encourage you to sign up for updates so you don't miss the webinars, and you can see other important announcements there as well. The next item, USDOT has announced the FY21 Infra Grant Program, NOFO. The Infra Grant Program, it stands for Infrastructure for Rebuilding America. And these grants will fund transportation projects of national and regional significance that address climate change and environmental justice. There is over $800 million in funding available for these grants. Large projects must be at least 25 million, and small projects must be at least 5 million. So this NOFO that was announced, it also announced the creation of the Infra Extra program. And that program identifies competitive applicants to those infra grants who do not receive an award, and it authorizes them to seek TIFIA funding opportunities. TIFIA stands for Transportation Infrastructure Finance and Innovation Act, but it's basically a loan for a project up to 49% of the project cost. So that information is also available via the link provided on the slide. A few other announcements. The 2021 National Work Zone Awareness Week has been announced by Federal Highway, and that week is April 26th through the 30th of 2021. So that's coming up next month. I'll drop a link in the chat pod so that you guys have that information available to you. Another announcement, the Freight Analysis Framework version 5.0 was just released, and this framework is produced through a partnership between the Bureau of Transportation Statistics and the Federal Highway Administration, and it integrates data from a variety of sources to create a comprehensive picture of freight movement among states and major metropolitan areas, and that's by all modes of transportation. So this public release just went out Friday last week, and the full freight analysis framework data update occurs every 5 years in conjunction with the census. So there'll be several other products released in stages throughout 2021. I will also drop that link in the chat pod. And my final remark is on ITS JPO. They are offering a free transfer of DSRC aftermarket devices to agencies for vehicles and buses because of a number of unpredictable events. Because these devices are free, ITS JPO is seeking deployment-ready agencies or state DOTs that would be interested in receiving a large number of these bus kits and vehicle kits that would provide limited design and technical support from US DOT. So if you have questions or are interested in more information about that, please reach out to me, and I will help you get in touch with the correct ITS JPO contact. So again, I will drop a couple links in the chat pod for you on Work Zone Awareness Week and the Freight Analysis Framework. Again, feel free to reach out to me about that transfer of dedicated short-range communication aftermarket devices. And that concludes my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. Next slide, please. This is a follow-up to the email that I sent to the ITS committee member in February, that the current chair and vice chair of the ITS committee, they're on 2-year appointment, gonna expire on June 1st. As of what yesterday, David was inaugurated, but time flies. So the current vice chair, Steve McKenzie, will ascend to the chair positions. We're now seeking letter of interest for the new vice chair positions. And this letter has to come at the city or town manager's level. It needs to be emailed to me directly by May 3rd of 2021. It is anticipated that the MAG Executive Committee will approve this appointment at the May 17th meeting. What it also means is that June gonna be the inauguration of Chair McKenzie, and May meeting will be the last that Chairman Lucas preside. Next slide, please. This is a quick update on the TIP Call for Project Working Group meeting. We sent out a meeting invite for March 21st. This is our first meeting. Started 8 a.m. and it's about 1 hour 30 minutes. This is an important meeting. I would like to encourage all committee members to attend, that we will look at the detailed budget, and that will give you an idea how you could develop your proposal. And we're talking about the important issue of project caps, and also other key ground rules. So if nothing else, this is the meeting that you want to attend. Next slide, please. This is a recap of this IT for ITS training that has just been concluded last week. I would like to thank Ryan Gish, MEG RCN Program Manager, for helping with the development of this training course. Also, Omar Abulaban for a wonderful organization of this 3-day training. And with that, I would like Omar to give a quick recap.
Thank you, Jeff. Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the ITS committee. This slide is related to the IT for ITS training that was conducted on February 11th, 18th, and 25th by MSI Tech and Moxa. The training was provided in both an AM and a PM option and covered a wide variety of topics. We had approximately 40 attendees from 11 agencies in this training. We had about 40 attendees during the first day, and then the second and third day, we had about 30 attendees. Day one covered some Ethernet essentials, such as IP addressing, difference between copper, fiber, and radio waves. It also covered network applications, such as the topology, different topologies, ring networks, redundancies, and how they can impact the network, such as causing a broadcast storm or any other impacts. There was also a basic overview of the network management software provided in day one. Then in day two, we took a deeper dive in Ethernet theory and mechanics, such as MAC breakdowns, VLANs, and redundancy mechanics. Day three, we closed with IPv4 theory, such as subnets, private IP networks. We also covered routing mechanics, such as routing from multiple routers and how to assemble and translate the information received by the devices, such as cameras or detectors at the signalized intersections. And we were also shown how to use IP tools such as Wireshark, trace routes, and routing tables. At the end of the training, we posted a survey and received some great feedback as well. We had about over 90% said that they feel that their knowledge or skill improved by taking this course. So this is a really good indication for us that the training went well and it was beneficial to the attendees. We also had over 90% reported that they would take a course at this level again, while 40% said they would be interested in a more advanced course. So this tells us that the training was at a good level of difficulty for everyone, but can be possibly split for more beginners training and a more advanced training in the future. And overall, the feedback we received tells us that the MSI Tech and Moxa team did a great job of making this training creative and engaging in the way it was presented. We also asked in the survey which of the topics provided were most beneficial to the attendees. And this will help us maybe improve and focus on those topics in the future. I also want to give a thanks to Ryan Gish for helping with organizing this training and getting everything set up. So thank you.
Well, thank you, Omar. Admittedly, I'm one of the beneficiary of this training course. The other day, I was able to fix my home Wi-Fi routers with the knowledge that I learned. So thank you, Omar, again. But next item, please. For this item, I would like to invite John Roberts, the ADOT System Technology Manager, to provide an update on the ADOT INRIX data user group. John?
Good morning, everyone. Just a brief update. This is something that regionally we've talked about for a while to involve the MPOs, MAG, McDOT, and ADOT into a users group around using INRIX data services and tools. We actually opened it up to the entire state. So on the 22nd of February, we had about 45 people from a number of different agencies locally and also from PAG and Sedona. So it was well attended. The goal for this group is essentially just to learn from each other, to try to raise level of understanding, to share use cases, to learn how we might apply some things that are being done in other agencies by other people to our own work. I mean, we've been, at least in ADOT, we've been very operation centric. So we've had people from planning, not only from ADOT, but also PAG and MAG. So look forward to having them provide some use cases and share some of their experiences and knowledge with us. This is also a deliverable for the EDC6 crowdsourcing efforts as well. So we've got a good start on 2021, and we had our first meeting. So the idea is to meet quarterly and to continue to move forward and let the team decide what the course and direction need to be, because again, this is about the users, not about ADOT or what we've done in ADOT. So I appreciate all the involvement from the different agencies, and look forward to some good work in the future. So thank you for allowing me to share.
Great, thank you, John. I'd like to thank John for organizing this user group meeting. Also like to thank ADOT for sharing the NREC license with the entire state. Next item, please. This is the last on my program manager report, the ITS Arizona update. I would like to invite the current Vice President of ITS Arizona, Mr. David Lucas, to provide the update.
Thank you, Jeff. So just some quick updates from ITS Arizona. Again, in 2021, we will be offering an internship program. Just some brief details on that. ITS Arizona will partner with a local agency or organization to provide up to $5,000 in funding to provide support for an intern. There are details that will be posted shortly on the website. There is an application that any interested agency needs to complete, and it also will detail the requirements of the program. You can also reach out to me or any of the other ITS Arizona board members for detail in the interim. This has been a great program. We've had really good experience with it, so it's definitely something we want to continue providing to support our students and future professional members. The next item is the 28th ITS Arizona Annual Conference. As you know, last year we were required to shift to a virtual format. It still went very well. We had great attendance and a lot of great technical material was shared. However, this year we're hoping that we'll be able to return to an in-person format. The current dates will be September 29th to 30th at the Mesa Convention Center, which is our usual venue. And we'll be sending out information shortly to save the date. We'll be opening up abstracts, things like that, the usual procedure that we go. We are also making tentative plans for a virtual format should we be required to do that again. But again, we are hoping that we'll be able to see everyone's smiling faces in person and be able to get together again in late September this year. Next slide, please. As part of the annual conference, we also have a student paper award competition, and we wanted to highlight one of our recent award winners from 2015, who is now an assistant professor at Michigan State. And she noted the award in her CV and has gone on to become an assistant professor in the field. So it's great to see that the support that we're able to provide, recognizing the burgeoning research programs that they start out with and continue as a member of academia. So just wanted to highlight that, and all of our student members who are out there, we definitely want to encourage them to participate and recognize and support their research. It's not only a beautiful plaque that's offered, but there is a monetary reward that goes with it to help support them in their studies. And I believe there's one more slide. And on a sad note, we wanted to acknowledge the passing of Tomas Guerra, who was one of our original founding members. He was our past president, in 2001, 2002. Jeff did a great job compiling some information that we were able to acknowledge his contributions, not just ITIS Arizona, and not just Arizona, but throughout the country. Tomas had his hands on a lot of very forward-thinking projects and activities throughout the country, and we definitely wanted to highlight those and recognize the contributions that Tomas made. He was a great gentleman, very noteworthy. If you knew him, you definitely understand the loss that we all feel in his passing. Jeff, would you like to say anything further on that topic?
Not really. I think you said it well.
Right, thank you. And with that, I believe that's the end of the ITS Arizona updates.
Great. With that, I think I concluded my program manager's report. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Are there any members of the committee who have any comments or questions on any of the items that were covered in the program manager's report? Please raise your hand in the chat, or you can speak up at this time. Okay, not seeing any. I will believe we will move on to item 5 on the agenda, which is performance measurements tools demonstration, arterial and bridge needs research platform. So MAG has recently completed the development of a research and analysis platform, initially used to conduct an arterial and bridge needs assessment for the region. Its utility quickly expanded beyond that purpose, and it's an ideal platform to quickly provide context for MAG's various call for projects. At this time, I'd like to invite Jeff Jack to provide an overview of this item. Jeff.
Great, thank you, Mr. Chair. In light of the upcoming TIP call for projects, we're looking at ways to improve the application and evaluation process. One issue that we encountered in the last call for project in 2019 was the measurements of things like AADT and other measures in the application form. I think agency has to come up their own way of estimating and find their source of these AADT information, and not to mention there are projects of a different size and nature. So this demo intends to show the feasibility of using a research platform developed by TED, the MAG Performance Measurement Group, to automate some of the measurements of these key input to the call for project applications. So with that, I would like to give the floor to Ted.
Thanks, Jeff. Very much appreciated. Let's dive right in. Next slide. So, Mr. Chair, members of the ITS committee, thanks for having me back to talk about the Arterial and Bridge Needs Assessment Platform, or as we like to refer to it as ABNA. Next slide, please. So the ABNA platform was initially conceived as a way to identify the next generation of arterial life cycle projects. But for an enormous list of reasons, it has expanded far beyond that initial goal. But I think the context of what we set out to do is helpful throughout this discussion. You can see on the screen here our initial goals. We wanted to establish a centrally accessible data warehouse. MAG has a wealth of data, but for transportation specifically, it's been a little siloed across our two divisions, and we wanted to fix that. We want to provide consistent data for the region to be used to compare projects. That means using consistent methodologies and data crosswalks where appropriate. We wanted to work with our member agencies to collaboratively develop how we were going to evaluate projects. So every single member agency had a seat at the table, and every person selected to fill that seat was initially approved by our intergovernmental committee. Finally, we wanted to apply those criteria across the network. And what we really mean there is we wanted to accelerate a shift towards need-based scoring. We have a relatively robust platform for comparing projects against each other. But until this project, we hadn't really taken the opportunity to step back and look at the bigger picture from a data standpoint and look at needs across our arterial network. All this to at least originally inform that next iteration of arterial investment. Next slide, please. So the first question I'm usually asked about this project is, what data do you have in the tool? You can see on the screen here every data set that we include, and I'm just going to touch on a couple of them. Arterials, wouldn't you know it, that MAG and ADOT have slightly different definitions for what's an arterial. Those little numbers on the side represent the 7 federal classifications used by ADOT, the 16 used by our TIP group, and the 22 used by the modeling team. To keep a long story short, if MAG or ADOT thought it was an arterial, then it's in the tool. The next one I'd like to touch on is the crash rate relative to facility expectation. This layer seeks to allow easier identification of safety hotspots. The general concept being, if we take an arterial segment that carries, let's say, 40,000 cars, and we compare that to all of the other segments that carry 40,000 cars, does this one have more or less crashes on average? Moving on to asset condition, we embarked on a 9-month effort to collect, conflate, and analyze pavement condition from every one of our member agencies. As you might expect, we don't use the same methodology or systems for our pavement data collection, but PCI is the predominant measure in our region, and the academic literature provided us with enough guidance to crosswalk all the other data received so we can present it all in PCI. Finally, under demand, we have a PMT layer, PMT being person miles traveled. Using some assumptions, we have incorporated transit ridership with our travel demand model output to create this layer. At its heart, transportation is really about moving people, and we wanted to reflect that in that layer. Next slide, please. The second question I'm then asked is, well, how are you weighting this data? And instead of just reading off the numbers here, I want to tell you about the process. We used a decision lens exercise to produce these weights. Our advisory group members attended a meeting, logged into what was essentially a survey where each criteria was put up against another criteria. And the respondent was asked to tell us not just which one they felt was more important, but how much more important it was. And this was done for every single criteria pair. On the bottom right, we've got our consistency score. This score is built into the decision lens tool and is essentially a measure of deception in the results. More simply, was anyone trying to game the system to get their desired outcomes? It's a little counterintuitive, but a 0.0 is actually a perfect score. So we were very, very pleased to get that. Next slide, please. So we're about to jump into the demonstration, but I want to give you a sense of what's happening under the hood while we're doing this. So we're going to identify a project location, and then the platform is then going to go fetch the data underlying that location, data that we have already defined and converted to a consistent unit so that it's comparable. So per capita, per million vehicle miles, per square mile. Then it's going to normalize that data for us. And data normalization is putting everything on a 0 to 100 scale so it's easier to consume. We do this by examining the entire data set, finding the minimum and maximum, looking at our standard deviation. Where it's appropriate, we've clipped or trimmed the data to provide us with a more meaningful distribution of scores. We're then going to apply the weights from the last slide and move on to the next criteria until we have a final score. So with that, let's go ahead and jump into the demo. And I'm going to steal the screen here. All right, hopefully we are seeing a map. So here's our landing page. On this layers page, we have the ABNA data layers I just talked about in the previous slide. We've also included some reference layers here. So we have transit routes, bike facilities, jurisdictional boundaries, those types of things to help you orient yourself. We also have scored networks and projects. I'm going to come back to those at the end. So the real strength of this tool comes from your ability to search or filter or interact with this data. And I just want to run you through some quick examples. So let's start with asset condition, and specifically we'll look at pavement condition. And we can go up here to our toolbar and use our filter tool. And for example, let's say we want to search pavement condition in our region where PCI is less than 50. And we can hit filter, and the map is going to remove any segments that don't meet that criteria. So what we're looking at now on the screen are just those segments on our arterial network that have a PCI score of less than 50. So that's one way we can interact with this data. I'm going to go ahead and clear this filter out. I'm going to, in deference to our chair, I'm going to zoom into Tempe here a little bit for our next one. So finding the information is good, filtering to it is good. It's great for quick analysis when we get to hotspots, but sometimes we want to interact with the data in a little deeper level than that. So let's look at, where is it here? We'll do crash rates on segments, and let's find segments where the crash rate is greater than 20 crashes per year. And we'll do a search here. So it's now searched the map and it's found every single segment where that query is true. So any segment where we have more than 20 crashes in a single year has been highlighted. And now that we've identified these segments, you get some information down here about those, and we can export those segments as well. So we can export them to a CSV, to Excel. We can even export it to a shapefile so you can keep your geometry and interact with that in your own GIS. So those two are two great tools, but both of those tools interact with a single layer. And quite frankly, it's oftentimes more helpful to interact with multiple layers. So we have a multiple layer interaction tool as well. Once again, I'm going to pick on Tempe. So it's going to go ahead and select all of the segments in Tempe, and then it's going to pop up a window here where we can set some criteria for it to search. So let's just combine a couple here. Let's look for pavement condition less than 75 and crash count greater than 10. And we'll go down here and hit submit. And it's going to search within Tempe for any segments that meet that criteria. And it's a little hard to see here with our additional layers turned on, so I'm going to turn those off. But we have 5 segments in Tempe where the PCI rating is less than 75 and they experience more than 10 crashes per year. So these two are, or these 3 tools, excuse me, are great for finding these kinds of areas we want to highlight. But once we found them, we then need to continue on and perhaps put a project there. So the next thing we can do is, let's turn on some of our layers. We can switch over to our ABNA tools. And you'll have to forgive me, there's a couple additional ones for administrative tools, but the one we want to focus on here is create a project. So let's create a project here on Rural Road. We'll click create a project. It'll ask us for a line or point. We'll say a line project. It wants me to tell it which arterial. We want to put this on Rural Road, and now it's asking for the extents. So we'll put it there. So here is our project line. Now in the background, it is now going to fetch all of that data that we talked about on the previous slides. It's comparing it, it's normalizing it, and it's producing a composite score. So here we got our composite score of 34 points. Let's go ahead and submit this project. At this point, I can put in all kinds of information about this project. Let's see. And I want to bring your attention to the source drop down here because this is part of a larger integration, I think, for MAG. This source is talking directly to our online application portal. MAG has moved forward with a number of online applications for street sweepers and a couple of others. So we can go in here and we can select and say, yeah, this is going to be for, you know, ABNA beta testing or paving or regional transportation plan. We'll select that and we'll hit save the project. So now it's currently saving the project. It's going to put it into a shapefile behind the scenes for us that's linked to my name because I'm the one who's logged in. But in member agency cases, each one would have a login and it would be linked to your own. Once this is done, it's going to produce a report for us where we can see some of the scores associated with this project. And I think we can actually click here for our detailed project report. Takes a little time in the background. There's a lot of data underlying this platform. I should touch on that data. It has come from a variety of sources within MAG. So each group kind of owns their own piece of data and we have borrowed from them to create this tool. They still maintain it and we have read access to it to produce things like this. So we have our report here now. You can see our overall project score. You can see some of that data that we entered on the last screen. Down here in the criterion, you can see some information specifically about this project. So for example, we highlighted specifically pavement condition, and you can see here our first criteria, pavement in good condition. The regional average is about 52%. This segment has 0.2% of it in good condition, meaning it gets a very, very high normalized score. Similarly, we'll see with the crash counts that this is a pretty robust crash location, almost double the regional average, which is why it gets the normalized score that it does. So this is produced for every project that you put in. We can select and change the criteria that's used. We can adjust it to any purpose that we see fit. We can also look at all of our projects that we've submitted. So I've submitted a number of test projects in here, and I can bring them all up, and I can take a look at previous projects that I've submitted, see the scores, break down their raw scores, their normalized scores. We also have some tools to allow you to download those project scores in a shapefile, Excel, whatever you need. With that, I want to jump back to our layers. And one of the ones I touched on was the scored network. So since we now have the capability to look at this data in an automated way, we went ahead and took the opportunity to break our arterial network into essentially 1 mile segments. And we ran the entire network through our scoring criteria. So we can get a regional picture of, based on this criteria, where would be the best locations to put a project or make an improvement. And as I said, we can change that. And so in here, we have even put in some test ones. So let's say that safety is our real focus. So we can switch this layer over and say, hey, just looking at our safety criteria, where are the hotspots in our region? Or I want to look at preservation. Where are the hotspots for preservation in our region? We think this tool gives us a lot of power for, doing calls for projects or other types of analysis now that we have regional context to go with our project submittals. With that, I think we can jump back to the presentation, and we just have another slide or two. Let's go to the next slide, please. One more. So just to touch on where we're headed, major development for this platform is complete. We have conducted a beta test on this with 5 member agencies. I think we've ironed out most of the kinks. I'm sure we'll find a few more as we turn this live to a few more people. Moving forward, as I mentioned, we can provide 1 login per member agency to access the platform. There's also going to be a public-facing version of this tool, but it's not quite ready yet. Obviously, we're going to have to remove a couple of those features and some of the more sensitive data layers. Internally, we're going to be working on maintaining and updating this tool while continuing to integrate it into our other offerings. You saw the connection to the online application portal. Currently, those 2 systems do talk to each other. We can pass the online application portal geometry information or transportation data, while it passes back which calls are currently open and available. We want to expand that connection and lengthen that pipeline, if you will, to have a more digital solution for our call for projects. Finally, this is not intended to be a static platform. As the development of the new RTP continues and programs continue to be defined, we'll work with the appropriate technical committees to include new data sets that will be relevant to future call for projects. This platform was designed with flexibility in mind. The criteria is flexible and can be changed. How we're looking at the data is flexible and can be changed. All that reporting, from the beginning, we have intended it to be flexible, adaptable. It's our main goal in putting this out there, because we know there's so many different committees at MAG who have so many different needs, and we want to make a platform that we're all going to be able to at least use. Next slide, please. So with that, here's the performance website. You can see some of our other offerings. Here's our contact information. Mr. Chair, that completes my presentation, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Ted, I do have one question.
Yes, go ahead.
It's just a very layman question here. Wonderful system, very versatile and all that. I'm thinking narrowly from our typical call for project standpoint. We're going to receive, say, several dozens of these projects, right? In the application form, there will be fields called AADT. What's the average AADT for your project? So in our current process, we did ask, well, optionally, to provide the shapefile information. I think in the future, this will have to be a requirement. So I'm trying to think how to leverage what you have here in support of our process would be, we will be able to give you all those shape files, and those are the project definitions in the platform. For each one of them, it will kind of query through the different data layer of our interest. In our interest being AADT, maybe congestion management, travel time index, which is part of the evaluation score. Safety, I know we're currently using the safety groups crash database, but you kind of brought it into this integrated platform. So this will be a one-stop shop for us if we could define it geographically in the shapefile, right?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair, Jeff, that's correct. And I didn't touch on the geocoding part, but all of these layers have been into the ADIS network, which is the linear reference system. It's extremely, so we would probably take the submitted geometries, conflate them to that network, and then run our analysis. In our goal of flexibility and adaptability, we immediately saw that having to code in 50 projects would be a little tedious to do right away. So we have the ability to consume a layer all at once and score 50 projects at a time, if that's the direction we want to head.
Wonderful.
Ted, there was also a question from Steve McKenzie. Steve?
Yeah, thank you. I just had a quick question. You had mentioned that there's just going to be one login per member agency. Is that something that would be able to be shared amongst the agency for different groups that would need to utilize it? It would just be one login, basically only one person could use it at a time, or is it associated directly to just one person?
It would be one person at a time, and your member agency login would basically be the name of your city or town, so that we can keep track, but you could pass it around or use it as needed.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Are there any other questions from the committee? All right, looks like you answered everything, Ted. Thank you very much for telling us about this great tool. And I agree with Jeff. I think it's going to help a lot with the upcoming projects. So thank you. All right, with that, let's move on to the next item on the agenda, which is item 6, FY 2020 TSOP project evaluation results. For the FY 2020 TSOP projects, MAG expanded the performance evaluation by conducting evaluations for all projects. A new set of methodologies were developed, and MAG will provide a summary of the performance evaluation results. At this time, I'd like to invite Eric Nava to present this item.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, and thank you, members of the ITS committee. So the FY 2020 TSOP list of projects were recently completed, as majority of them completed in December and a few in the end of January. And in total, we had 8 projects that were completed, and here's a screenshot of all the projects for the FY20 list of projects. We had one additional project, as we normally do in our cycle of TSOP projects, that is a project evaluation that looks at the performance of each of the TSOP projects. In previous cycles, we would have that one project that would read the or would gather the travel time information for 3 corridors. This year, we decided to do something different. We had the opportunity to look into possibly developing a new performance methodology, as we've had previously presented in past ITS committees. That Kittleson helped us put together a new methodology that includes 2 different sources of information, that being INRIX from the PDA suite, as well as a TransSync, which is a mobile application tool and desktop tool to gather GPS data from travel time runs. So as this points out, that as a reminder, the FY20 projects were originally programmed to start in the spring of this last year, but all projects were moved to FY 2020 due to COVID. So these 8 projects were going to be used as essentially a pilot to this new methodology. And I'd like to thank WSP, Stephen Dubeck from WSP, and helping us in performing the evaluations, and he will be asked to present a little bit of the performance results, as well as Kittleson for helping us and continuing to help us with the performance evaluation methodology. Now, one large thing that we wanted to point out is, again, when a lot of the work that we're working on stems from the SM&O, our Systems Management Operations plan for our committee. And one of those goals is to highlight those impacts of projects using before and after evaluations of corridors. And we want to help exhibit those benefits, the investment costs, such as the TSOP program, as a program, investing the money and finding the benefits from a performance standpoint and travel time savings by optimizing corridors using of the traffic signals. So this new methodology is helps us to gather as much data as we can, as comprehensively as we can, and to try and apply it for all TSOP projects. Now, the two sources of information that we have, or the two sources of data for all these evaluations, INREX covers a vast majority of our region. There may be some corridors that it may not essentially cover because of just the network coverage, but it provides us at least some information comprehensively and as uniformly as we can. And we're using that data for this methodology. In the past, we've used the floating car method to collect travel times along 3 separate corridors or 3 separate projects. With the TransSync tool as of right now, we're still using that tool in the same way, but the tool itself provides us a lot more information and a lot more performance data that we use in this methodology. And again, the methodology is to try and be as cost effective as it can. So in terms of the two sources of data, we have the TransSync data that is giving us real-time diagnosis as it's running, as the person is running through the corridor in the before analysis and the after analysis, and giving us that information. Basically, it's vehicle trajectories. It's a GPS tracker that collects the stop times and the amount of travel. But what's unique to the tool as well is that you can incorporate the signal control timings from the controllers that were coded in, and it essentially produces a travel time, or a time-space diagram. So as it records, it's following along with what is anticipated to be the timing plans in trying to drive through the green bandwidth of the corridor. So it collects all this information, records video, which again provides system through the corridor performance measures, and is able to help us identify some of those hotspots and things that need to be fine-tuned. With the INREX PDA suite, the data is again very comprehensive, and it gives us a historical view of the performance of that corridor. Now, there's some limitations again to the INREX data. It provides us a lot of information, but again, it is anonymized. It is aggregated data in terms of congestion and the segments themselves. So it does have some of its limitations, and we'll see in terms of what was being reported for this year, but still gives us some analysis, and in using the methodology, we can extract some useful information in terms of the improved performance of these corridors for the 8 projects of this last year. Now, in the methodology, the evaluation is done in a spreadsheet tool that Kittleson has prepared. It aggregates all the data from both the TransSync tool once exported out of the tool, as well as the INREX data platform as the massive data downloader for the time periods of interest. It aggregates all the information into the spreadsheet and produces a list of different reliability performance measures corresponding to each of the corridors in measurements, as well as it eventually comes down to we'll calculate a benefit cost calculation using the information from each of the corridors, using some of the turning movement count information for volumes, and some stated assumed assumptions through the corridor, including the cost of the projects. And again, as we continue through this methodology and this current year being the piloting of this, there are some things that we will continue to work with Kittleson in fine-tuning this tool, but again, still finding a lot of benefits from this. So what I'd like to do is invite Stephen Dubeck from WSP to help us go through the evaluation results from this FY2020 list of projects, as he was the project manager performing all the evaluations.
Great, thank you, Eric. And good morning, Mr. Chair and ITS committee members. As Eric said, we're going to go over just a highlight of the results this year. I do want to highlight Y2K was a great partner with us in the data collection, and then working with Kittleson has been a great experience. And their methodology documents really does a great job step by step of how to collect the data, to analyze the data, and then helps in the reporting of it. So just kind of jumping into the different components. First off, the data collection. As we know, NRICS, it is a vast amount of data across many different, well, every day of the year. So it gives you a lot of flexibility on what days you're going to use for data, and then a lot of flexibility to move around the different TSOP optimization projects as they're working. While TransSync, as Eric pointed out, is out in the field, kind of floating car method. So you're going to have to go out, schedule it, get in the field, data collect, and then have very good coordination with the TSOP optimization teams and the member agencies to make sure you're out there at the right time and not during construction activities or other known delays that could change the results. And moving on to that analysis itself, the methodology is quite diverse. It has a lot of outputs, including travel times, number of stops for TransSync. As Eric pointed out, benefit cost ratios for both NRICS and TransSync. TransSync also offers letter grades of the signal timing based upon a handset of criteria for each corridor, and then the performance measure in terms of delay and travel time. So a lot to report on, a lot to review, and we'll go through a little bit through those results and show the benefit costs in the next slide. For possible next steps, we were kind of looking at the value that we could expand on this. And one of the big topics was be able to get the before time evaluations done prior to the TSOP teams starting to work with the synchro models. Because using the NRICS data and providing that as long as with the TransSync videos and seeing the existing synchro models and the traffic progression through the green band provides a lot of value to kind of setting the goals and the approach for the TSOP teams. And the second value that we could definitely expand on, and it's more towards the NRICS platform, is looking at longer spans of data with NRICS. So after a year goes by from the FY2020 projects, what's the data going to look like when you aggregate 3 months and compare seasonal year after year? And will that provide different BC ratios than the short time span we're able to do as part of this task? So if we can go to the next slide and kind of dive into the results. So here we've got the benefit cost ratio table. You can see all the TSOP corridors this year are here. I would like to point out for the Phoenix and the Tempe TSOPs, we divided them up into corridors. For Phoenix, McDowell and Van Buren specifically, and then for Tempe, we divided the rural and McClintock corridors up. And the first three you'll see are the corridors we did both TransSync and NRICS for. And you can see comparing the two, TransSync does, at least for our data set, provide a higher benefit cost ratio than NRICS for the three corridors. And the benefit column is the benefit over a year as terms of saved travel time or reduced delay, assuming a set dollar amount for hour delay, as well as the average volumes each direction along the corridors. Now, to kind of try to dive into possibly some reasons why TransSync and NRICS do have the different benefit costs, we came up with some ideas, but I think, as Eric said, it's going to be interesting as this methodology evolves over the next few years. what more can we glean from it? But to keep a note, all these results are only for the corridor itself and does not include any kind of improvements for the crossroads. I know being involved in the TSOPs before, you're optimizing splits for the crossroads as well as turning movements that could reduce your green window on the main corridor, however, still provide great benefit for the TSOP itself. The second thing, comparing INRIX to TransSync, Eric kind of alluded to this before. TransSync is very similar to floating car. You're getting a ton of accurate data and looking at the live video and everything, where INRIX is the aggregated data that you're not going to be able to pull out possibly turning movement delays along the corridors or emergency vehicles. One thing that came to mind when we were in Dysart, doing TransSync, we had an emergency vehicle preempt the signal where we were only delayed about 10 seconds. We could account for that in TransSync. INRIX, when you're looking at the results, you may not be able to pull out every individual little bit of delay. So just something to point out there. And then obviously the pandemic is happening, and we know within the region from multiple data sets that volumes are getting back closer to normal, and hopefully will become normal. We won't have to deal with this again. But just want to note there is a chance that multiple corridors or all the corridors volumes changed from November 2020 to February 2021. And then looking at this at a program level, which was really where I think the benefit cost comes into play, is that the INRIX, when averaged across all the corridors, showed a BC ratio of just under 7. And then TransSync across the 3 corridors showed a 39.6 benefit cost. So that at a high level is the results we're seeing. And then if we can get to the next slide, please. Wanted to go over some lessons learned, and I want to point out we were working with Kittleson and MAG real time, so all of our lessons learned are implemented in the methodology. So hopefully the speed bumps won't be hit for future years. But the first one is the synchro import into TransSync. It is actually surprisingly pretty easy, and TransSync does a great job reading the synchro files. There are a couple things though you have to watch out for. And I want to bring up the Greenfield corridor because it's like the worst case scenario in terms of geometrics, where you have curves and a TI, which as people who attended the training know, you've got to do a little bit more post-processing with TIs. You've got to remove the TI traffic timing, the cluster, separate them, make sure the phases are right, and then do a little bit of text editing before you import to TransSync. But that does solve that situation. And then naming every single link in the synchro file and making sure it's consistent helps out a lot, because TransSync follows the naming conventions. So Greenfield, for example, goes from Greenfield Road to Santan Village Parkway back to Greenfield Road. So you've got to make sure all your naming is consistent, and you can tell TransSync, Santan, Village Parkway, and Greenfield are the same. And on that corridor, Greenfield is also a crossroad at one point. So TransSync was trying to follow the crossroad and making a right turn instead of following the main corridor. So we just had to rename it, and then make sure all segment links do have names. Some small driveways and some of the TSOPs weren't named in the synchro files, which provided hiccups. But easy things to recover, to solve, and make this a little bit more efficient going into the future. The next lesson learned is more towards INRIX, and that's I skipped one, is communication with the TSOP teams. There is a lot of communication real time between the TSOP consultants, the member agencies, and MAG project managers themselves. Making sure everyone's got the right files, making sure that we know when the implemented timings are going to be put out into the field, when is field adjustments happening, and making sure everything's timed correctly. So I thought we did a tremendous job this year. I just don't want to, for future years, to underestimate that lift. And then the INRIX data, and you can see at the bottom of the screen, that is one of the performance measure tools that was used. That one is specifically for the Grand Avenue corridor. But using those congestion and performance tools in the beginning, really using those to look and see if there's any outliers of data. Did your speed drop one day and not the other at a specific time, or your travel time increase? And that allows you to give the flexibility of changing days if need be to get a better average data set than just randomly picking 3 days for both before and after. So definitely want to spend the time to review those. And then lastly is more towards the TransSync is the data collection delays. We ran into pretty much everything in terms of crashes while we were out in the field. We had rain delay for the Phoenix AM corridor, and then did have some construction that came in mid travel time runs. So just build a little bit of float into the schedule for TransSync to make sure you can work around those kind of delays. So. And then I guess the picture on the top right, just point out that is the Phoenix McDowell AM after, and that just shows you TransSync and seeing all the runs in the green bands. And when you import that into TransSync, you can export it with videos as well for each of those runs in white and yellow. So very powerful tools. I'm really excited to see how this progresses and see a trend over year doing all this data collection. And that is all that I've got, and pass it back to Eric to close out the presentation.
Thank you, Stephen. I appreciate a lot of what Stephen was able to do on these projects and being very flexible. And one thing that I wanted to highlight again that I think Stephen and I have said a few times is, you know, in terms of the benefits, we do see a lot of these benefits. And when we actually even get into, again, an added benefit of looking at the INRIX information, looking at the report, we do have, we extract these performance charts as well as the congestion maps, and showing that even though maybe numbers wise or like a BC ratio wise, some of those maybe are not as high or as large as maybe some others, or even in the TransSync side, but we do see some of the trends. We do see trends that begin to show the improvement of that reliability, that and some of the spots that you see throughout the day is there is improvements through a certain amount of those portions. So, and again, in the future, we do intend to continue to refine and evolve with this tool. And this being our first time doing it, I think we've been really quite successful and continue to work with all of our consultants in the next round of projects. And with that, that concludes my report.
Thank you very much, Eric and Stephen. Are there any comments or questions from the committee? So in lieu of the results, or in light of the results, Eric, are there any plans to change the use of TransSync in the future for future TSOPs, things like that? How did the difference in some of the results impact that decision?
That's something that we're actually currently evaluating, looking into. As of right now, for this next round, because we're preparing the FY21 projects, which will be coming out very, very soon, there really is going to be no change, but we are taking these reports back to Kittleson, as we still have Kittleson on task to support us on the evaluation performance as we continue to write the guidebook on the evaluations and the use of the tool. So as we continue to move forward, you know, we'll take these evolving steps one cycle at a time.
Understood. All right. Thank you very much.
I did want to just make one comment if I can.
Please, Mike.
I just wanted to, thank them. I know they brought up Greenfield Road as the worst case scenario, but I just appreciated everybody, working so close together and the extra time that was spent on it, and just the collaboration. I mean, it was good, and I appreciate it. That's all.
Thank you, Mike. All right, with that, we will move on to item 7 on the agenda, MAG SM&O Performance Reporting Plan. The MAG SM&O plan has identified several priority focus areas, and it is imperative for MAG and the region to track the performance of various aspects of the SM&O plan. This process will generate performance reports and will also help inform future funding and investment decisions related to SM&O in the MAG region. The MAG SM&O Program Manager, Jeff Jenk, will now present an approach for implementing a performance reporting system for the SM&O initiatives in the MAG region. Jeff?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I know that I'm standing between you and the lunch here, so I will try to speed it up. So next slide, please. So like Chairman said, that it is one of the key emphasis of the MAG SMNO plan to establish some systematic way to track the performance. And it's not only for tracking these SMNO project coming out of the plan, but also for the future update of the SMNO plan. So this presentation will present a conceptual design of such system. Next slide, please. So why performance reporting system? We have projects constantly coming out of the plan, the TSOP being the annual projects, TIP projects coming out of competitive and non-competitive processes. And also in the future, there's likelihood of more of the local funded project with the new RTP plan. So it is important for us to have a way to keep the tracking on these projects in terms of the performance. To give an example, that the TSOP that's being conducted annually, but we have no quick way of telling people where those projects has gone, by year, and or perhaps within the last 6 years, what corridors, which segment has been retimed and all that. I think to do that, we really need some kind of platform to document all these past and the future projects so that we could do the planning. Deployment tracking. Well, the SMNO and ITS in general has the interest of have such an emphasis on deploying the new ITS technologies and to help with the traffic management and incident management and whatnot. But again, I mean, from the regional planning standpoint, as we're doing that, it would be nice to know where what devices go into what locations and whatnot, so we could do and plan out for the replacement and identify area where the gaps might be. And totally for the SMNO plan is living documents. For the next go around, we will need these data in support of our future decision. So next slide, please. We think there are a couple of major components in this system that we have in mind. To start with, interface, and that's how we consume the informations. There will be public-facing components, a website that we could incorporate in the MAG website for general public and anyone interested of browsing, and also be showcasing our achievement with the testimonial program. And there will be internal access controlled web interfaces to do things such as, we could gather data and we could, do our internal planning, do the what if query and whatnot. And another component is the ITS inventory. And since the ITS really deal with a lot of these field implementations of the devices, and we would put in the communication and whatnot. From a regional standpoint, as we are conducting these call for project from a regional, for the entire region, we have an interest to know at the proper level of the inventory. Not that we want to know everything in the traffic signal control cabinets, which is not possible, but as certain key information level type of controller, perhaps the type of communications and or even which the corridor running on time of day or adaptive or running free. These ITS inventory are the key informations that need to be collected. The performance measure, when it comes to reporting the effectiveness, the performance measure will be using the similar concept that Ted had presented, data layers, that exist in such a system. Then it's the analytics, for different system, you have a different requirement how you query and consume this information. So for ITS, we need to ask the question, from the ITS planning for the infrastructure deployment, from a performance measure tracking standpoint, and how do we want to query, how do we want to view all these past year of TSA project and all that, and those will be a kind of design requirement that go into the analytic part of the system. Next slide, please. So going a little bit more detail of interface, the public-facing interface is important, and that publicize what we do and what we achieve, and that's important in educating the general public and the decision maker as well. So a good example, Eric has mentioned that the Dr. Koch Denver Regional Council of Governments, they got some great example of showcasing their equivalent of a TSA projects. And then there's internal web interfaces that I'm mostly using TED example. These are the things that's meant to be a tool to the MEC staff and as well to the member agencies. Next slide, please. ITS inventory is key. We're talking about physical inventory data. Again, we don't need everything, but we have to ask the question, what are the right level of information needed for regional planning, for traffic signals, devices of interest as we pursue things that a device of certain capability and whatnot. We want to know where has been deployed, what, the type of communications. Also, part of the ITS inventory is really the operational data, not only documenting what's there in the field, but rather, what type of configurations. An example being, the traffic signal timing data. We found that extremely useful, and I know Mac's modeling group has been consuming those information constantly. And in the past, we had to go back to each agency manually getting, a lot of those in PDF format and re-encode it into the model. And also operational planning, a prime example would be the I-10 Broadway curve, Mac has been using and led by Eric Nava, the dynasty modeling, you need the timing information that's part of the modeling exercise. So I believe that in this system, a part of this system development, we will put in extra effort, try to automate the acquisition of the traffic signal timing data. Again, I want to put a word of caution here. We're not asking for, say, a real-time status of what you have on the ATMS, rather just more of what they call the traffic signal inventory data, phases, definitions, and timing plan, and the schedule and whatnot. Those are the essential information for modeling and operational analysis. Signal controller type, time of day, adaptive, dynamic max, and freed, and all that. When we have those presented at the regional level, gonna inspire a lot of additional dialogue and rethinking about our policy. And other things such as remetering, whether it's a fixed, whether it's adaptive, or other features that worth mentioning as we conduct the planning at the region level. And of course, there are also other attributes, ages of these equipments. If we're going into cyclical replacement and all that, those will be attributes of interest as well. Next slide, please. So performance measure, in light of Ted's demo, I mean, those performance measures are literally data layers, exist in the systems, and we'll ask the question as to, for regional planning in the ITS, what are these layers? And, there are travel time related measures, and they could be from different sources, and they are volume aggregated in different format, AADT and whatnot. There are events data and accident, incident, planned events, and all other. And these are important informations when it comes to planning and querying and making use of these data. One example is, when we're trying to analyze the performance of a certain period at a certain locale. When you go into, say, NRIX, and one question pop up in my mind is that particular period of interest, is there something going on in the network? So the current system is, these measures apparently exist, but they are all in different systems. You access them one at a time, and they do not cross-pollinate. And I think when all these measures come to a common platform, as indicated in this diagram, the conflation that all these measures of using different units, stretches, and segment definition and whatnot, all brought into this common platform, that it allows us to conduct queries across all these measure of interest. One of the things that Ted has mentioned is that, and that's important in our development of a requirement, is we will need to leverage the existing measures and data sources within MAG and even outside of MAG, and perhaps it resides in the RAS. Then we will build our system in the way that we kind of will take those data, and therefore the continuous maintenance of those data and whatnot still is conducted by external party, but we could get to consume that seamlessly and as a system. So next slide, please. The analytics is how you expect to see and query and analyze the data. I think the one key point of doing this is we want to be able to query all across all platform of all the performance measures, and be able to measure by user-defined locations and segment zone, and which could be a project of interest and area of interest and not. Also, of course, you could specify a particular time window and measure by weight if a multiple measure were involved. Then we will need to think about the output options. What's the ultimate use of these information, whereas a graphical presentation that's part of the report, tabulars, or versus something that can also be fed into other systems. So next slide, please. So this is the plan. I think this is an important step, and I know this won't happen overnight. The next step we will do is conduct a requirement study and also use that to develop the detailed work scope. We expected the actual development of the system would go out for bid in the second half of 2021. So with that, I conclude my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Any comments or questions from the committee? All right, seeing none. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you.
With that, we will move on to item 8 on the agenda, request for future agenda items. If anybody any member of the ITS committee has a topic or issue of interest that you would like to have considered for discussion at a future meeting, you could go ahead and indicate that in the chat or raise your hand now. I'll give you a moment. And of course, you can always email those to either myself or Jeff as well. Seeing none, we'll move on to item 9 on the agenda, which are comments from the ITS committee members. So I will go around the room and invite each of you to share any information related to ongoing ITS-related projects or other activities in your jurisdictions. Let's begin with you, Susan. Anything at ADOT?
Oh, not a whole lot to add this morning. Those of you driving around the valley will notice that ADOT is continuing to turn on more and more of our ramp metering. I believe we're activating a few more sites along I-17 in the coming weeks. So traffic is starting to creep back up there, and we're taking actions for it. So other than that, I just want to wish a very warm congratulations to Nicholas on his retirement. So enjoy it.
Thank you, Susan. Hugh?
Nothing from Goodyear.
All right, thank you. Tricia, anything from Mesa?
Nothing from Mesa today.
Thank you. Albert?
Nothing for surprise, but want to congratulate Nicholas and thank him for everything he's done.
Thank you.
Trini, anything from Chandler? Okay, it looks like he might have had to drop off. Hong, anything from Scottsdale?
No update. Thank you.
Thank you. Bruce?
Good morning. Yeah, actually, I do have. I want to thank the committee for giving us 2 projects under the SMO, the Indian School Fiber and the baseline. I know there was some intrepidation as to whether we were going to get them in or not. Indian School Fiber did get done and made it in the fiscal year in which it was done. But more importantly, for this group, heads up, guys, prices have changed dramatically to the positive. Well, I can't say yet who got it. We do have an apparent low bidder. It has to go to council for approval. With the engineer's estimate for Indian School Road fiber was $4 million. Bids ranged from 2.6 to 3.6 million. The big component was the price per foot installation. All 4 bidders were in the same ballpark and well low than anything we've ever seen before. So the tide has changed, at least in this blip. So I just wanted to give everybody a heads up that prices are changing to our benefit significantly. That's it.
No, that's great news. That's great news. Thanks for sharing that, Bruce. Yin Yang, anything from ASU?
Nothing to report, but congratulations to Nicholas.
Thank you.
Thank you. A couple updates for City of Tempe. The first streetcar vehicle is undergoing final testing at Brookville Equipment in Pennsylvania and should be arriving later this month. After it undergoes some initial static testing at Valley Metro, it'll begin testing along the alignment in Tempe sometime in the May or June timeframe. We're working on deploying the remaining streetcar controllers along the alignment. M-track installation is scheduled to be finished by end of month, and we're currently working with Valley Metro on the center-to-center connection between the Tempe TMC and the Valley Metro OCC. Bruce mentioned the baseline fiber project, which we are a partner in. That design is at 60%, so that's moving right along. And I think the news about the lowered pricing, hopefully that'll continue for that project as well. And the city still has 2 vacant positions for ITS signal technicians. So those are still available and out there. And with that, we'll move on to Steve with Peoria.
No updates from Peoria besides we're in the same boat as Tempe. I believe we're going to be advertising for probably 3 signal tech positions here in the next month or 2. And then I just wanted to wish Nicholas the best on retirement and appreciate everything he's done for the region.
Thanks, Steve.
you. Scott, anything from Pinal County?
No updates from Pinal County, but I would like to congratulate Nicholas on his retirement.
Thanks, Scott.
Eduardo?
Nothing from CD Maricopa.
All right. Marshall?
Yes, I just want to announce that we were approved for next fiscal year for another traffic engineer, but they've advanced it and we're actually accepting applications now. So that's a good thing. It also is a sign of the volume of work that's going on in Queen Creek. Our Econolite ATSPM demo project is gathering data now. We've run some initial recommendations for improved signal timing, and we're looking at that. And it's giving interesting results, so hopefully we'll be able to do a debrief to the group on that down the road. That's all.
Great, thank you. Raquel?
Nothing from Apache Junction.
Thank you. Ward?
Nothing from Avondale, but I would like to congratulate Mr. Schwartz on his retirement. May it be warm, enjoyable, relaxing, but still interesting. Take care.
Thanks.
Mike, anything from Gilbert?
Mike's in a chat. He had to log off. Nothing from Gilbert.
All right. All right, thank you. Tessa?
Yeah, an update on two of our projects that are going into construction. We have a new traffic signal going in on Dysart Road and Acoma Drive. And then our second project that's going into construction is implementing and installing flashing yellow arrows at 9 of our traffic signals, which is a majority of our traffic signals in El Mirage because we're pretty small.
Right. All right, thank you. Tony, anything you'd like to add for FHWA?
Just congratulations to Nicholas. Nothing else to report for Federal Highway.
Thanks, Tony.
All right. Marty, anything for Valley Metro for your first report?
I was going to mention some stuff about streetcar, but David, thank you for doing that during the Tempe. And I just want to say thank you all for having me. I'm excited to be part of the committee.
Welcome. And saving the best for last, Nicholas, if you'd like to provide any updates on McDOT or even more importantly, what your initial plans are for your retirement, which is well-deserved, and a hearty congratulations.
Oh, thanks, David. Yeah, no, I do not have anything. I can hand it over to Faisal and April if they're on the line, if they have any updates. But, you know, before they do that, yeah, so answer your question. No, you know, I would like to do some travel. Obviously, I also want to, you know, to research my family tree and take it back as far as I can, hopefully back to the Netherlands through South Africa. It's kind of a that would be an experience. And then, you know, I like to do things in and around the house, so that would keep me busy for a while. So initially, yeah, I have a full plate, but we'll see how it goes over time. Thanks, Dave.
Well, great. Thank you, and best wishes.
Thanks.
Faisal, April, anything for McDOT that you would like to report?
So this is April. We do have those 2 adaptive projects that are awarded for Bell Road Phase 2 and all of Dunlop Avenue. So that project got procured with, I think it's Red Hawk in collaboration with Rhythm Engineering. So we're having our kickoff meeting in the next couple of weeks. And so more to come on that.
Glad to hear it. All right, with that, the next meeting of the ITS committee will be held at 10 a.m. on Wednesday, April 7th, and it'll still be by virtual teleconference unless otherwise notified. And with that, thank you everyone for your time and consideration. Oh, I apologize. It looks like we have an update. David Cates, are you still on the line?
Yes, sir.
Yes, if you would like, looks like you had a report.
No, I just thanks for the invite to the meeting and best wishes to Mr. Swart.
Thank you.
Thank you. I apologize for not calling on you on the agenda. All right. Thank you, everyone. We look forward to seeing you next month virtually, and take care. This meeting is adjourned.
Thanks.